Hi everybody, I hope you're all well. I'm back here with my second review of the day after being sick for a week and a half and being away for 3 weeks. It's been, quite so horrible having this bug and not being able to read properly, but I finally got through Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Brandon. Why do I say Brandon? I put an N where it's not needed. It's Braddon. Braddon, not Brandon. God, Braddon. So sorry, Mary Elizabeth. Didn't mean to say Brandon. It's probably because of Colonel Brandon. I see the wording and I just instantly put an N in there when it isn't needed. But yes, Mary Elizabeth Braddon. And so I'm here to talk about it. So what is Lady Audley's Secret about? So we begin the book with the wedding of Lucy to Michael Audley, Sir Michael Audley, making her lady. And she basically was a governess for one of his mates. He fell for her, he proposed, she said yes. Fast forward a little bit. Then we find that Michael's nephew, Robert, comes for a visit to meet his new aunt and also to see his cousin, who he has a very, very close relationship with. This was in Victorian England, where marrying your cousin wasn't deemed as a bad thing, just to clarify. And he brings along his friend George Talboys, and George has lost his wife. He went off to Australia to find work and money and such to provide for his family, only to get notice that his wife had passed away. And he has returned to England and had been studying and such with his friend Robert, and Robert's invited him to basically go to his uncle's house to meet his new aunt. And when he arrives, his new aunt, Lady Audley, is acting a bit odd. She's just doing things that just doesn't make any sense, which catches Robert's attention. And in the course of the visit, some things happened and George goes missing. And it sends Robert on a mission to find out what happened to Robert and what is Lady Audley's secret. So that's the overall synopsis of the story. I went into this already knowing what Lady Audley's secret was. Not going to say what it is. Don't want to possibly spoil for anybody who intends to read this book. But it's one of those things where you see the title, you know what the ending is. that happens from time to time, especially someone like me who loves books. Everyone assumes I've read every book and is like, no, that's not the case. So somebody who's a real big fan of that book will go, oh, didn't you love it when X happened? And it's like, hello, I haven't read the book, thanks for spoiling. I really hate it when people do that. And it's not just books, it's films and such as well. When people do, I hate it. Especially, it's even worse if someone goes, oh, the twist at the end was great. So it's like, so I'm anticipating that there's a twist. I know that something is coming up that's going to completely baffle me. Thanks for letting me know that. I'd rather be surprised. Just don't say anything. Just say, I thought it was really good. But that's my own thing. Especially because it's a classic novel, I think it's that thing. It's been around for a while now, so I can't get annoyed that I know what the secret is before I have actually read the book. And if you listen to, because I've recommended it before, Stephen Fry's Victorian Secrets, there is an episode about women in crime. I think it's the 4th episode, and I only know that because I listened to it again only a couple of weeks ago. And Lady Audley's secret is included in that episode, and he talks about the ending. So just FYI, you might want to stay away from that episode if you don't want to be spoiled. So going in knowing what her secret was, I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing, because it made me, I think, see things that I wouldn't necessarily see the first time round. So you could say that that was a bad thing, but it also made me see things, I think, from her perspective more than I would do elsewhere. So let's talk about, first of all, let's just talk about the author. Let's talk about Mary. So Mary was a Victorian writer, as I said, and she had a very interesting background in that her parents had their issues, and there was a whole thing of a love affair that had happened that her father had done outside of marriage and everything, and her mother took her away from that situation. And it was like, wow, a woman taking control. She can't divorce him because it wasn't allowed. Once you're married, and any children that you have are property of your husband. Any money that you have is property of your husband. And yet her mother took her out of that situation, raised her on her own. And it's like, wow, that is a strong ass woman. So she had a real strong woman figure in her life. Fast forward to as she grew up, she actually then became a love affair between with a married man, and because he could not leave his wife and children for the same things that that happened between her with her parents, they ended up living together. They had several children and had to wait like something like 15 years or maybe more, 20 years for his wife to die for them to then marry. So it's like it's very interesting that an affair outside of marriage, how that impacted her parents and caused her mum to do this really strong thing of walking away and starting a new life with her child. And then she becomes the woman to, you could argue, break up a marriage, and had to wait 15 to 20 years in order to then marry the man that she wanted. And she had to live living with him outside of wedlock, which was a massive no-no, and having 6 or 7 children with him. I find that so interesting. And she wrote books about strong characters, and Lady Audley's Secret is her most famous. And when you know her backstory and you know Lady Audley's Secret, it's like, wow. I totally get what she's writing about. And as I read this, I could not help but wonder, is my pre-knowledge of Lady Audley's Secret mean I am being more sympathetic to her than I should be? Because, as I said, Victorian society, very different from our own. What she did in her real life was a big taboo. And when Lady Audley's Secret came out, and it did come out as a serial for its initial release before it released probably as a book, it was a massive hit. It was one of the most scandalous books that was out there at the time. And the fact that it's a woman who is taking control of her life in a society that says no, a woman can't do that. And if a woman, it's very interesting actually that there's a whole thing about madness and if it runs in the family. And there's a doctor who's like, no, there's madness does not run in the family. And then he speaks to her and she's like, I just want to have my own life. He's like, you're mad. A woman cannot do that. That's female hysteria. So he's like, oh, so she is mad then, is she? You know, it's just having a strong independent will as a woman in Victorian England was just, it was so hard. And so characters like Lady Audley, you go from looking from our modern day perspective, you go, how right, she was fair to do what she did. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but she did some messed up shit to be able to do that. And then when you think about it from a Victorian society standard, she's evil. She is the worst, one of the worst human beings out there for what she did. It's just, I'm so conflicted. I'm like, at times I'm reading through this and I'm like, I'm really on her side, and other times I'm like, I totally get where Robert's coming from and where he sees things, and I just, yeah, I was so conflicted on how I felt about her, and thinking about how how massive a stir this caused when it came out, when it originally was published. I'm like, I wonder how, if there were any sympathetic readers towards her at that time. And oh God, I was so conflicted. I'm like, did she get the ending that she deserves? And quite frankly, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. And I loved that. I love the fact that I was so conflicted. I didn't know what was right and what was wrong. But the Mary, with these things that she has Lady Audley say, where she talks about the chains and everything of being a woman, and why can't a woman choose what she wants? And at the same time, you have this whole thing with Robert and his cousin and them falling in love and such. It's like, well, does she get a say in what she wants and how she feels about things and such? And she uses another character called Phoebe, who is Lady Audley's maid, to look at, well, what if you're in an abusive relationship, but you still love that person? And, you know, and in Phoebe's case, alcohol is a factor and everything. And it's like, where do you draw the line between I'm here, I'm in love, I'm doing what I need to do, and this person is physically hurting me and I've got to get out of this? Where do you draw that line? I love the fact that she had all of these different characters at different social standings with different situations, who were all female, and it's like, okay, why is it okay for her but it's not okay for her? What is where is the line? And the questions that Mary asked was just fantastic. This is a Gothic novel, and it did make me think of Laura Purcell and Charlotte Jenkins Perkin. No, Perkin Jane. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It's, hang on, I can see the book over there. It is Perkins Gilman. So sorry, Charlotte. My brain right now is not in a good place. I swear, I've just done my Hunchback of Notre Dame review. I've done another video, and now I'm doing this one. I swear, I should have taken breaks between these videos, but I haven't. Sorry. Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It brought her to mind. I also got vibes of, when I was talking about Charlotte's work, like Shirley Jackson and Susan Hill and such. Mary Shelley with Frankenstein. I've got all of these different authors that were flooding my brain as I was reading this. And most prominently, a male author, Wilkie Collins, The Woman in White. This is tagged as being the female equivalent, author equivalent of The Woman in White. It is that, and it is so. That is so true. That is so true. I kept on thinking about The Woman in White, and I'm like, yes. I loved all the questions that I asked, and I loved the mystery of where is George? What happened to George? And how that twists and turns and unfolds and into the overall story. You have so many different elements that come about, so many different characters, and I loved the fact that it kept on going back to the house and describing the house in all of its beauty and glory and the layout and the plants that, you know, like growing up like ivy and all this lot. And then as the story goes on, it almost like becomes decayed, and to the end where it's just a building. It's just a shell. There's nothing left inside. And that's kind of, you know, obviously reflecting Lady Audley, that when we first meet her, she is this very beautiful, very high class, you know, lady. She is this absolutely stunning beauty. And by the end, when we know everything about her, it's like, there she is. That's the reality of what's going on here. It was pretty incredible, I must say. I might just do a very quick reading from this. Let's just see where it was. So yeah, so just to give you an idea of her beautiful writing, this is talking about the lands, the surrounding area and everything, and talking about Lady Audley herself. So, the same August sun which had gone down behind the waste of the waters glimmered redly upon the broad face of the old clock over the ivy-covered archway which leads into the gardens of Audley Court. A fierce and crimson sunset, the mullioned windows and the twinkling lattices are all ablaze with the red glory. The fading light flickers upon the leaves of the limes in the long avenue and changes the still fish pond into a sheet of burnished copper, even into those dim recesses of briar and bushwood amidst which the old well is hidden. The crimson brightness penetrates its fitful flashes till the dark weed and the rusty iron wheel and broken woodwork seem as if they were flecked with blood. The lowering of a cow in the quiet meadows, the splash of a trout in the fish pond, the last notes of the tired bird, the creaking of old wagon wheels upon the distant road, every now and then breaking the evening silence, only made the stillness of the place seem more intense. It was almost oppressive, this twilight stillness. The very repose of the place grew painful from its intensity, and you felt as if a corpse may be lying somewhere within that grey and ivory-covered pile of buildings, so death-like with the tranquillity of the all around. As the clock over the archway struck 8, a door at the back of the house was softly opened, and a girl came out into the gardens. But even the presence of a human being scarcely broke the silence, for the girl crept slowly over the thick glass and, gliding into the avenue by the side of the fish pond, disappeared under the riching shelter of the limes. She was not perhaps positively a pretty girl, but her appearance is that of an order which is commonly called interesting. Interesting it may be, because in the pale face of the light grey eye, the small features and compressed lips, there was something which hinted at a power of repression and self-control not common in a woman of 19 or 20. She might have been pretty, I think, but for one fault of her small oval face. This fault was an absence of colour. Not one tinge of crimson flushed the waxen whiteness of her cheeks. Not one shadow of brown redeemed the pale insipid. I can't speak. Insipidity of her eyebrows, her eyelashes. Not one glimmer of gold or auburn retrieved the dull flaxen of her hair. Even her dress was spoiled by this same deficiency. The pale lavender muslin faded with the sickly grey, and the ribbon knotted around her throat melted into the same neutral hue. Her figure was slim and fragile, and in spite of her humble dress, she was something of a grace and carriage of a gentlewoman. But she was only simply a country girl called Phoebe Marks, who had been nursemaid to Mr. Dawson's family, and whom Lady Audley had chosen for her maid after her marriage to Sir Michael. Of course, this was a wonderful piece of good fortune for Phoebe, who found her wages trebled and her work light in the well-ordered household of the court, and who was therefore quite as much the object of envy amongst her particular friends as my lady herself in higher circles. A man who was sitting on the broken woodwork in the well stared at the lady's maid come out of the dim shade of the limes, and stood before him amongst the weeds and bushwoods. I'm not going to carry on because I can see what's coming up in the next paragraph, and that's spoilers. So yeah, for some reason I was thinking that was talking about Lady Audley when right before I started reading. I'm like, oh, no, it's Phoebe. So you found out about Phoebe, and you heard a bit of her talking about the beauty of the gardens and such. And that really poetic, fluid way of talking about the beauty and everything really is prominent in the beginning of the book. And as time goes on, it fades out to where the building is just a shell. It's a building. It's nothing. It's just, it's very, very interesting piece. The way that Mary wrote about the limitations of being a woman in Victorian England, I think, is absolutely stunning. And she is a gothic novel. I never actually really properly thought of this as being a gothic novel until I started reading it, and I was like, yeah, I can see it. And you can see also her being influenced, I think, by writers such as the Bronte sisters. Can't help but see it, like Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Quite a bit, I'm just a bit like, yeah, she probably read those books and could have gotten some inspiration there. So I really, really love that. I love that there's so many layers to her story. And as an introduction to Mary's writing, because I'd never read one of her books before, I think it was a really good one to choose. The structuring was really, really interesting as well. She mainly does third person perspective, but at times she does switch to be like we're focusing from Phoebe's perspective, and such, to be able to find the deeper level of understanding of each character, and also ask those questions about women in Victorian society of what is right and wrong, what are the limits of what can be done here. And I do, as I said, I do wonder if people, when they read the book, either in the serial or when in its published full form, sympathised at all with her, with Lady Audley. And at times, like I said, at times I did, and at times I was a bit like, okay, I get that, but that thing that you did is a bit questionable if that was a good thing, so I was so conflicted. It would be so interesting if we were able to have general, like how we have Goodreads now, if we had those kind of things back then, to see how society felt about these books. But unfortunately, we don't, and I didn't research exactly what reviewers thought of this book when it was published, so that's something for me to do now. But yeah, I found it a very interesting novel that I didn't see coming. I knew her secret, but I didn't know anything else about this book, so I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. Nothing like that. I didn't know characters. Nothing. So I'm really glad that I didn't know any of that. As I mean, I knew the thing, but I didn't know what led up to it. I didn't know characters. I didn't know anything other than that. So in a ways, I was kind of blind to to a big bulk of this story, and I'm glad about that. It was very, very interesting read, and I really enjoyed it. Now, when it comes to adaptations, sadly, there are very, very few of them. There was a 2005 drama that was done of it, which I found on YouTube yesterday, and I watched it yesterday, and I liked it, but it was a bit light and fluffy. It didn't go anywhere near the depths and the darkness of the story for me. I felt like if they had done with it like they did with, I know 2000 and 2005 and now are different times, but still they're not that long ago. Not 2005, sorry, it's 2000. Completely wrong here. But still not that long ago. If they had taken the time with it, because it's only an hour and a half, I think if they'd taken the time with it, made it longer and made it more, looking more in depth the character and how they feel about things, it would have kind of like how the more modern version of The Woman in White that I really loved that the BBC did. I think it would have been so much stronger. And they did do something, a Lady Audley's ending at the end of the day, and I totally get why they did it. I totally understand that it's dramatic and it's a really interesting way to end it, but at the same time it's like, yeah, that didn't happen in the book, mate. Kind of like the Hunchback review that I did, I filmed earlier today, where I was like, with the one from the 1930s, I think it was, where he's like, oh, you're nearly there, and at the 10-yard mark you fall over. It's like, that's what happened with that drama. It was well constructed, but yeah, it just didn't quite work with the ending for me and was rather rushed. But that's the only drama, TV or film drama that there's ever been. There have been a few stage ones, but very, very few. And there is one BBC radio play version which got released. It was from years ago, but it got released like days before Christmas last year, and I haven't been able to finish listening to it before filming this, unfortunately. But what I've heard so far, I've really enjoyed it. It's a good drama of it. The only irk I have, just one irk, is that it's in a radio collection of Mary's works, and Lady Audley is 2 hours out of a 3.5-hour collection, I think. So good amount, really good amount of time. The irk is that it was shown broadcast over 10 parts, and each part is about 12 minutes, and they have the 12 minutes with the opening closing credit is the music, not the actual, they don't actually list who's in the cast and everything at the end of each of the 10 episodes, but it means that every 12 minutes you have the closing and introduction music. And it's kind of like, well, why don't you just not have that music? Just chop off the elements of those music, so you just literally have the opening music at the beginning of the first episode and the closing music at the end of the 10th episode, and just block out all the stuff in between. It just makes the flow a lot nicer to me if you just have it in one block, but they didn't do that, so that's my only irk with it so far. I'm about halfway through, but that's the only irk, so not bad at all. So I will include a link to the Audible site for that below in the description. So those are my thoughts on Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. And to Charlotte, I said Brandon again, Braddon. Oh my God, I am so sorry, Mary Elizabeth, and I am so sorry, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, for completely butchering her name earlier on in this review. I think I need to have a break after this. So Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. So it's time to ask my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yes, definitely. I'd love to, like with Hunchback of Notre Dame, take a bit of time away, then come back to it and see how I feel. Has my perspective changed? Have I been drawn to different characters that I didn't feel drawn to in the original read? I don't know. We shall see. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yeah, definitely. And especially, I love just a shout out, the Penguin English library editions, these beautiful covers, and they feel so nice. And I have their version for The Woman in White, and just they're really lovely. So I definitely give a shout out to this edition. I thought it was really, really lovely. But yeah, I definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested in Gothic literature, and yeah, any about 5 strong female writers from the Victorian period. Would I read any more of Mary's books? Yeah, definitely. I'd like to give Mary's writing a go. I don't know her full what's the word? Bibliography. That's the word. I really, really should have a break after this, shouldn't I? Because I'm being very, very bad in this review. I can't get my words right. I don't know her full range of works, but yeah, I definitely have a look into what else is available and track down another of her books. So those are my thoughts on Lady Audley's Secret. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to you like you decide. And I will be back with my next video, which is just a very quick one, just to remind you what my next couple of reads are. Because in case anybody missed my Christmas video. But review wise, I'll be back with my thoughts after I finish reading Madly Deeply, the Alan Rickman Diaries. All right, guys, bye.